My life story proves that it is impossible to outrun the pursuing affection of God. My life proves that God is a God of great expenditure who spares no expense to pursue fugitives of grace like me. None. He relentlessly endures our sense of entitlement. He absorbs our rebellion, and he keeps coming after us until our hearts melt under the heat of his love. That is who he is. And over the last month, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, being freshly acquainted with the fact that I haven't earned God's love. I don't deserve God's love. In fact, I'm self-aware enough to know that I've done everything to disqualify myself from receiving God's love. Throughout my life, every sin in thought, word, or deed, in the words of R.C. Sproul, is an act of cosmic treason, okay? So just in case you might think, well, I haven't done anything really bad. I've had my ups and downs in life, and I haven't been perfect, but for the most part, I've kept the straight and narrow. Any selfishness that has ever been expressed at any point in time in your life, any good deed that has been left undone, or any bad deed, thought, word, deed that you've done, is an act of cosmic treason. In other words, it doesn't matter whether your life's been good or bad, hard or easy. We're all desperate for mercy, desperate for God's grace. And God relentlessly endures all of this stuff, and he just keeps coming after us until our hearts melt under the heat of his love, which is never ending. I think it's been two things: God's love for me and his faithfulness to me for 50 years that has moved me the most as I've pondered that and reflected on that for the last month. His faithfulness is overwhelming to me, overwhelming. When I think about how faithful God has been in the face of my faithlessness, when I think about how gracious God has been in the face of my guilt, it's overwhelming to me. And in reality, it fuels my faith because it helps me to go, when I face things in the future, to go, look at who God has been my entire life. Look at what he's done. Look at how he's come through. Look at the way he's cared for me when I've been at my worst. Look at the way he has just tenderly watched over me and provided for me when I've been at my worst. Look at who God is. Look at what he's done. His faithfulness to me is great. It's amazing. And his love. I have never been unloved. Never. Never by God. I've been unloved as you have by lots of other people. I've been unfriended and unloved. And so have you by other people. But we've never been unloved by God. Never. I mean, I know that sounds so basic. Think about that for a second. You've never, ever been unloved by God. And you will never be unloved by God. Other people's love for you may wane, may fail and falter, but God's love for you is a non-blinking kind of love. It's unconditional. He's always loved you, always. And he always will love you. I wrote this a while back now. Gosh, it's got to be 10 years. And I had to make some edits to update the ages, my age in particular. And I've read this a portion of this to you guys before, so maybe you've heard this, but as I was finishing up my prep last night, it was this piece that I wrote so many years ago that came to mind, because I think even more so now, it describes the way I feel than even when I wrote it. When I was 25, I believed I could change the world. I set out to change the world. I was on a mission to change the world. Well, at 50, I've now come to the realization that I can't change much of anything, to say nothing of the world. I can't change my kids, my spouse, you guys. I can't change anything, much less the world. Try as I might, I have not been able to manufacture outcomes the way I thought I could, either in my own life or other people's lives. Unfulfilled dreams, the loss of friendships, divorce, failure, the death of loved ones, remaining bad habits, whatever it is for you, live long enough, lose enough, suffer enough, and the idealism of youth fades, leaving behind the reality of life in a broken world as a broken person. Life has had a way of proving to me that I'm not on the constantly moving forward escalator of progress that I thought I was on when I was 25. I mean, when you were younger, did you just not assume that you were just going to get better and better and wiser and more capable and competent? Why is it that just about the time you feel like you've mastered the universe, God reminds you that you haven't? Okay, that was me. I mean, I was at the top of my game, midlife, early 40s. God had to remind me that I was still desperate for mercy and in dire need of His grace. Instead, my life has looked more like this: try and fail, fail then try and succeed, succeed then fail. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. Every year I get better at some things and worse at others. Some areas remain stubbornly static. I still get annoyed by long lines and bad drivers. That hasn't changed at all. To complicate matters even more, when I honestly acknowledge the ways I've gotten worse, it's actually a sign that I may be getting better. And when I become proud of the ways I've gotten better, it's actually a sign that I've gotten worse. And on we go. Round and round we go. Well, if this sounds like a depressing sentiment, it isn't. Quite the opposite. If I am grateful for anything about these past 25 years, it's for the way God has wrecked my idealism about myself and the world and replaced it with a realism about the extent of His grace and His love, which is much bigger than I could have ever hoped for or ever imagined. One poet put it like this: the love of God is greater far than tongue or pen can ever tell. It goes beyond the highest star and reaches to the lowest hell. Could we with ink the ocean fill, and were the skies of parchment made, were every stalk on earth a quill, and every man a scribe by trade, to write the love of God above would drain the ocean dry, nor could the scroll contain the whole, though stretched from sky to sky. His love for you is everlasting. It began before the foundation of the earth, and it will continue on through eternity. God is the best friend you will ever have. He's the greatest lover of your soul that you could ever hope for. And I have been so grateful over the last month for the people that God has gifted me with and the redemption that I have seen in my life over and over and over again. I've said this before, but I am not alive and standing before you today because in my darkest and worst moments, I held on to God. That is not why I'm here. I've let go of God 10 trillion times. The reason I'm alive and standing before you today is because God has never once let go of me, even though I have tried so many times to wiggle away from him in rebellion and stupidity and foolishness and selfishness. And he's never blinked. I was telling my son a number of months ago, my oldest son a number of months ago, we were talking about God, and I was giving him reasons why I believe in God, because sometimes he struggles to believe in something or someone he's never seen or had a verbal conversation with where he could hear the other person speaking. And I gave him some reasons why I believe in God, went through some of the typical arguments for the existence of God. But I said, at the end of the day, Gabe, the primary reason I believe in God is because he's the best friend I have ever had, man. I've had people come and people go. In some cases, the reason people have left has been because of me. In other cases, people have left because it's been them. I've screwed things up. I've blown it on so many different occasions in so many different ways. I've hurt people. I've been hurt by people. Seasons come and seasons go. God has remained the same. His steadfast love endureth forever. And I don't know where you are right now. I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's either scaring you or frustrating you or making you feel unsafe or unloved. I don't know what's causing you to feel increasingly insecure. I don't know. I don't know. What I do know is this. I know that when all the chips are down and when all is said and done and when all the dust settles, God is with you. He made you for himself. He designed you specifically for himself. All of the details that make you who you are were crafted meticulously by God. He knows you. He loves you. He's always known you. He's always loved you. And like I said before, he knows you better than anybody and loves you more than anybody could. And my hope and my prayer for you and for me, quite honestly, is that that's something I'll never forget. Ever. Let's pray.